I'll cop to this. I listed about 9 names. I said if we're going to look for other mayor affairs, other mayor girlfriends, here would be my 9 most likely names.
And then you actually gave
and
their
I
names.
listed their names and I listed their positions. I said I have no evidence that the mayor has had affairs with these, but if I wanted to name the people the most likely that the mayor would be having an affair with, these would be the ones, because we're dealing here with a man who is not capable of monogamy. He has shown that time and time again.
Well,
and so if you're a female, an attractive female, and you want to spend a lot of time alone with a man who's not capable of monogamy and who flaunts society's mores in that respect, you're going to have people talk about you. And that's the choice you take when you go into closed doors with this type of man.
Well, where do you draw the line then between speculation, your own theory or analysis of what's going on, rumor, innuendo, and on the one side, and what's acceptable to put in your blog on the other side? I mean, is it fair? Does anything go?
No, absolutely.
Is there a filter?
There's got to be a filter. The filter is going to be that people who conduct themselves like Eric have a ton of credibility. Eric's blog is absolutely as reliable as the LA Times.
He said blog.
And same with Kevin Roderick at LA Observer. My website, by contrast, is much more like a talk show, where it's much more like me and Eric just kicking back and talking and me saying, do you think New York's mayor is gay because he's got this lisp, and something that's totally bad journalism, but that's how people in real life talk. Much of my website is like a talk show. Therefore, it doesn't have as much journalistic credibility as Eric's. I'll totally cop to that. Now, I'm quite queasy about what I did with naming the 9. I think that's, it's definitely in bad taste. Quite queasy about it, and as a consequence, I'll get well-justified criticism for things like that. The line is not clear. I disagree with Bill that we know now if a mayor has an affair, then therefore it's fair game. These stories play out differently every time. We never know what direction they're going to break.
Do you guys see yourselves as the watchdogs of the watchdog?
Not necessarily. I see myself as a reporter who does good stories. I don't differentiate between any potential story, issue, person, place, or thing, and there shouldn't be any taboos in regards to going after good stories. And the mainstream media itself is doing that more and more these days. I mean, a guy I work with, Brian Ross at ABC News, just did a story about the ethics and journalistic integrity and everything else of Dateline NBC and To Catch a Predator. And the public, I think it's because, and there's a reason for that, the public is going to get its news, like Eric talked about. It's not saying I'm getting my news from KTLA or I'm getting my news from the New York Times or the LA Times. I'm getting my news. I'm going to get it wherever it is, and the internet is everywhere. And I'm going to go get my news, and I'm going to pick and choose and take my pieces of information, and I'm going to determine what I think the story is.
Well, what effect do you think you're having on what these guys are doing?
I have some effect. I have some credibility. And so if I was to break...
How? What kind of effect? How does what you write impact what they're reporting?
Because they read me. Because I have a huge number of journalists that read me, because I've been breaking stories since 1997. So I'm constantly breaking stories. I'm frequently getting details wrong. I'm not as good as Eric, not as good a journalist, but I'm serious. I've got enough credibility where people like Mr. Spillman here do have to pay some attention to what I write.
So do you see your role as sort of the instigator, the guy who gets things rolling, the guy who influences the mainstream media to take a look at something that you've got wind of? You're not claiming to finish the job in every case.
Right, absolutely.
But you start it.
I often start it, and I'll get the ball rolling. See, if I have one part of a 20-part story, I'll often run with it. While Mr. Spillman here would need at least 10 parts of that 20-part story to run with it. So I'll often get a ball rolling, and then Spillman and company will take it over.
Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Do you get story ideas from reading Luke Ford? And ersnews.com?
You know, I read blogs, and sometimes there are things that come from blogs that result in stories. I think, you know, what they're doing is a good thing. I honestly do. I think, like I likened it before to a wall of graffiti. Sometimes graffiti is
I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not.
No, it is. I mean, you know,
it's generally like, not considered a good thing.
No, but it is, because, you know, people write truth on the wall sometimes, and you need to follow up on that. And they put it out there, and it's an opportunity for people to send in things sometime, or post things anonymously, or for people to get stories out there that they couldn't get anywhere else. Luke hears from people who couldn't get their stories published in the mainstream media, and so they go to him. And I know, you know, you sometimes hear from people who have stories that they want to get out there. I mean, there's reasons for it, and it comes out, and then we follow up on it. But I think, you know, what we do is important in terms of following the rules that we have, the ethics that we have, and it prevents you know, the type of situation like I talked about before, where people's reputation get damaged, you know, just because somebody anonymously is accusing them of something that they may or may not have done.
Bill, how are these guys impacting the papers?
Well, they've opened it up.
Fresh air?
Well, no, it's
Different
I don't know if it's fresh air. But it's air.
Graffiti,
toxic air. Well,
toxic air.
Some people think, there are actually some people who argue with you that this graffiti is great art, right?
Sure.
But I don't know if this is great art. But it's opened it up in the sense that before, if somebody had a story to tell and you couldn't get through to the LA Times, there'd be nobody, or you couldn't get through the news desk of a station, there's no one to tell it to. I mean, you don't know how hard it was when I was there to get through to anybody at the LA Times if you had a story. And a lot of people really had good stories. I mean, we had one person who answered the phone, and this person was a copy messenger. And now some days this person could be really good and ambitious. Other days it could be somebody who was on the verge of getting fired, or hated the boss, or because they were underpaid and oppressed, which they were, and they wouldn't do a good job. To get through to, like when I was city editor, to get through to the city editor was a total matter of chance. Now, I was there at the city desk, you know, my phone was ringing all the time, I had people coming up and all that, and then sometimes I'd be sitting there and the phone would ring and I'd answer it, and the person would say, I can't believe that's the only thing.
Like talking to the president.
I can't believe I got a hold of it.
Can I give some examples? Before I had a blog, I used to fax news stories to the LA Times, and their follow-up was just very poor. And finally, when I got a blog, I got to write my stories, and then about 4 years after I broke these stories, then the LA Times came along with its ponderous 10,000-word piece.
Well, you know what, also, you got to look at what the goals are of each of these organizations or sites. I mean, the goal of the LA Times, the goal of the TV station is broadcasting, and the goal of a lot of these websites is narrowcasting. Luke, you write about Orthodox Judaism. You know, Eric, you write about media issues. You know, those are narrow issues that people are interested in. You have a constituency. They know to go to you to find out about that stuff. You work for KTLA, we got a broadcast license by the FCC. We got to serve the whole 5-county area here. You know, that's part of our mandate. It's a different goal. It's a different set of circumstances.
Well, but I'd say there's one universal goal, and that's, you know, always to generate an audience and to generate the things that come from that, and that's, I have the same purposes as NBC News does, and that's to get as many people to look at my ersnews.com and to sell advertising just like everybody else does. And I'm sure Luke does too. You know, he'd like to have as many page views as guys like Perez Hilton have, who you know, demonstrably destroy mainstream media outlets and the audience that they're attracting, regardless of whatever they're putting on the web. And that's the thing with the public. I don't think the public sees the difference much anymore, because when you have the kind of scandals in the mainstream media of, you know, of journalistic ethical problems, they want the information, and they're going to go get it wherever it is, and they have the ability to do that now. The gatekeepers have been shunted aside, and the gates have been thrown open, and you can say the barbarians are, you know, overrunning the the castle, but that's what the public wants. And so I was pretty amazed, being a mainstream journalist my entire career, at how